Hey, this is Devin, and you're watching the long-awaited, long-promised sequel to the last video. In the last video, I built a simple social network using Supabase and Vue.js 3. In this video, we're going to be taking that application and deploying it to Netlify. If you didn't watch the last video, you may want to circle back and watch that first. I don't think this one will make a whole lot of sense and may not do you a lot of good otherwise. It's a long one, it's about 3 hours long, but I think it's worth it and I think you'll like it. If you watch both of these, you're going to build and deploy an application from scratch. That's all the preamble I have, so we are off to the computer! Here we are at the computer. I'm at netlify.com. That's where I'm going to be deploying this. I'm going to start by logging in. And it looks like I'm already logged in. I'm logged in with my GitHub account. If this is your first time using Netlify, you'll probably just click on a login with GitHub button, and then it will have you authenticate through your GitHub account. We're going to be deploying this from GitHub, so Netlify needs to have access to that anyway, so I think that's a good choice in terms of the Netlify login. To start, let's click on New Site from Git. Now, we're actually going to stop here on Netlify because one thing that's going to be super important in order to deploy this site from GitHub is for this site to have a repository on GitHub. In order to do that, I'm going to first switch over to my terminal. I'm in my Timeless Supabase project directory. Going one step further back, in order for this project to have a repo on GitHub, it has to have a local repository that I can push up to GitHub. To create that, I'm going to type git init, and that will initialize my local repository. Now I need to put something in that repository. I like to start by typing git status. This tells me the files that Git is aware of, but that are not yet in the repository. That's what I'm seeing under untracked files here. With most projects, you're going to have some files that you don't really want in your repository. In the case of this project, that is our .env files. In this case, those contain my keys for Supabase, so those won't really be relevant to anyone else who wants to pull this down. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell Git to just ignore those files altogether. I like to do all that from the command line, so I'm going to show you how to do that. I start with echo, which is just a Unix command that outputs some text. And I'm going to have it echo a pattern that Git will match, and any file that matches that pattern will be ignored. The pattern is going to be .env dot, and then we're going to use an asterisk, which is a wildcard. That means any file that starts with .env dot is going to be ignored. But this alone doesn't ignore anything. What I'm going to do with this is I'm going to redirect it using that right angle bracket, and I'm going to redirect it. Oh, actually, I want to use two right angle brackets because I want to redirect that into a file that already exists. If I do this, it will redirect and recreate whatever file name I give it. There's already a git ignore in this project. I honestly don't know what's in it. We'll look at it after this is done, but I probably don't want to just overwrite it with just this ignore pattern. I want to add this to the end. So if you want to redirect and append, that's two angle brackets. And now I'm going to give it the name of the file I'm going to, which is .gitignore. Press return on that. You'll get no output, which is fine. And now I'm going to use cat to see what's in that gitignore file. Okay, yeah, we have some basic stuff. I think this is a gitignore file that got created by Vite. Oh, and it looks like we've got some Supabase stuff in there too, so I guess Supabase added some stuff, or maybe this was created by Supabase. I'm not really sure. But at any rate, at this point we've got a gitignore file. It has a list of files in it, and among those is our .env files, which should now be ignored. To confirm that, I can use git status, and you'll see that in the untracked files now, I'm no longer seeing those .env files. That's because Git does not care about them at all. Yes, they're untracked, but Git is ignoring them, so it's not even going to show them to us here. That's going to allow me to use git add and then dot, which indicates the current directory. That will add everything in the current directory as long as Git's not ignoring it. Okay, let's run git status again just to confirm what that did. That added all of our application files, that added our package.json and package.lock.json so that we have our dependencies recorded there. It added our vite config and our main index page, as well as the gitignore file itself. Those .env files are nowhere to be found, which is exactly what we want. All these files are staged, but they're not yet committed, so they're not really in the repo yet. To do that, I'm going to use git commit. I'm going to use -m, which means I'm providing a message, and then in quotes, I'm going to give the message. This message is just going to be initial commit. Press return there. Now those files are committed. Now, if I run git status, I can see that we're on the master branch and there is nothing to commit. Let's flip back over to the browser, and I need to get this up to GitHub. So I'm going to go over there. I'm already logged in here. If you're not, just log into your account. Then you're going to hit this new button next to repositories. We're creating a new repository on GitHub. I'm going to use the same name for the repository that I used for the directory, and that's timeless Supabase. This is going to be a public repository. I'm not initializing it with anything because I've already got code in a local repository. I just need to push it up to this remote repository. GitHub will give you some helpful instructions about what you need to do next, some quick setup if you know exactly what you're doing. I skip right past that because I just want to copy and paste some stuff. And what I want to copy and paste here is this second set of commands, push an existing repository from the command line. That is what we have. I can click on this little copy button over on the right. Now I can flip back to my terminal and paste that right in there. That is going to run all the commands I need to get my project up to GitHub. I always like to confirm that everything has done what I expect it to do, so I'm going to flip back over to GitHub and refresh this page. And now I see a listing of all my code, all the files that are in this repository. That means it worked. Now we're finally ready to go back over to Netlify and finish setting up this new site. We're going to use continuous deployment. What that means is that every time we push to our repository on a certain branch that we're going to get to define, Netlify is going to take whatever build command we give it. It's going to run that build command against our new push. It is going to deploy the result of that build to our site. We're going to do continuous deployment from GitHub. You saw that flash up a window that said authorized. If you have not authorized Netlify yet to access your GitHub account, then it'll run you through a little flow there that has you basically give Netlify permission to access certain parts of your GitHub account. I've already done that, so it just went right through it. Now it's telling me there are no repositories found. This can happen when Netlify doesn't have access to the repositories in an account. Netlify only asks for the permissions it needs, so it asks for some general permissions on your account, but not access to all your repositories. In order for it to deploy this site, we need to give it access to at least that repository. To do that, I'm going to click Configure Netlify on GitHub. You may not see this. I'm a member of some organizations, so I sort of have access to different GitHub accounts through my account, but this repo is on my personal work, whatever, my account that is named for me. Now I can give it access to all the repositories if I want, or I can give it only select repositories. I think I'm going to do that because I don't really see a benefit to them having access to repositories that I'm not going to be deploying through them. This one is timeless Supabase. This tells us what permissions we're giving them. We're giving them read access to the code and read and write access to checks, commit statuses, issues, and pull requests. Then we're giving them read access to emails. Honestly, I'm not sure what that is. I don't get any emails through my GitHub account. Anyway, I trust Netlify, so I'm going to go ahead and install this. Now I have to confirm my GitHub account with my password. Once that's done, I'll be right back at this create a new site view, and I'll have that repo that I just gave them access to listed there. If you gave them access to all repos or multiple repos, you should see all of them there. The owner and branch are fine to leave as they are for the purposes of this project. The base directory, what is that exactly? The directory where Netlify installs dependencies and runs your build command only for mono repos or sites built from a subdirectory of a repository. That will not apply to us. We are in the root directory of the repository. That's where this project lives, so we can leave that blank. Now they want our build command. This is the command that we would run from our command line if we wanted to build a production copy of the site. I'm not sure what that is, so let's just flip back over and check on that. I know that the command is defined in the package.json, so I'm going to cat out the package.json and just look at the scripts section. It's right here, and see what I have. I've got dev, which is what we use to run our local development environment. Then I've got build, which should be the production build. And then I've got serve, which I guess brings up a preview server. I don't know what that is different from dev, to be honest with you. But I think build is the one we want. And the way you get to these commands is npm run and the name of the script. npm run, so npm run build should build the production site. And that's their default choice. So I think that should work. Now they want to know which directory it's going to publish, which directory they're going to make the actual site that they're publishing. I don't know the answer to that either. So the easiest way I think to figure that out is just to run npm run build and take a look at the directory and see what's there. Actually, it looks like the output of this command is going to tell us everything was built into this dist directory. I can use ls to confirm. Yeah, there's a dist directory there. So yeah, that's where this is going to be served from. And that's their default choice too. Let me show advanced just to see what's in there. I don't know if this is anything we're going to need. Ah, it is something we're going to need. This is where we will define our environment variables. If you remember way back when we first started this project, we set up those two .env files so that our application could talk to our local Supabase instance when we were running in development, and the remote, the real cloud instance of Supabase when it's running in production. Since we're not going to ship those .env files to our GitHub repo because we don't really want to give away our Supabase keys, we need to provide them in some way, and this is going to be the mechanism for that. The .env files are creating environment variables, and that's what this interface does as well. I need to know the key for the variable and the value, and there are going to be two variables here, I think. Let's flip over. I don't know what these are either. If there's anything you learn from this, it's that I don't remember anything, I just know where to look for it. And if you can develop that skill, you too can be a web developer. Let's cat out our .env.production file. Okay, this is the Vite Supabase URL. We're going to have to create an environment variable with this key, Vite _ Supabase _ URL, and then it's going to have this value. You may want to copy and paste both of these values, because if you end up with a typo on any of this, your application won't work. But I'm going to play with fire and see if I can just type it out. Vite Supabase URL. Now I'll paste in the value I just copied. Now I need to grab the other one, and I'm just going to copy this. That's too much trouble. Okay, and now let's copy the value. This value ends at this %sign. The % is not part of the value. These function settings do not apply to our application. We're not running any Netlify functions to make this app work. All of our back-endy stuff is happening in Supabase. Let's deploy the site. The site has been created. If you look here, you see that the deploy is in progress. That's also indicated here in the Getting Started section. Let's click on this and see what that does. Oh, okay. That's going to take us to the deploys. We see this is building. If we click on this, we can see the details of the deploy, and we can actually see what's happening on their build server as it's building out this app. That's kind of cool. You don't really have to understand this or read through it. It's just a neat thing. If something goes wrong, it would be really useful to know where this stuff is so you can go in and see what is happening. Maybe you left a dependency out of your package.json. Like maybe you installed a dependency with npm, but you didn't save it into your package.json. So now you've pushed this up and Netlify is not installing that dependency, so the build is failing. You might be able to see something like that here. Back in the site overview, it looks like the site's deployed now. They want us to set up a custom domain, but I don't really care about that. I can use their domain. Feel free to do that if you want. Let's just click through to that domain and take a look at the site. I'm going to zoom this a little bit so you can see it. This looks like our site. Let's see if it works like our site. One thing to note is that everything we were doing before was on our local Supabase instance, so that database was all local. That means you can't just start using that same username and password here, because this one theoretically is hooked up to the cloud instance of Supabase now. That's a completely separate database. So we kind of need to start from scratch with this, which is also why you're not seeing any of those posts I created earlier. I'm going to go ahead and put in an email address and a password and try to sign up, and let's see if it works. I got an error message here. It says your login failed, but it sort of worked because my phone buzzed pretty much at the same time I did this, and it's a sign up confirmation email from Supabase. As far as the application knows, it failed, but it seems like it succeeded. It's just waiting to confirm. Let's head over to Supabase at app.supabase.io. I'm going to sign in. Okay, here is the project. I'm going to the authentication settings, enable email signup, disable email confirmations. We weren't running with confirmations before, and I think that's because the local version probably doesn't do that. So if we want our app to work the same way, we probably need to turn this on to disable the email confirmations, which I think is what we want here. Let's save it. Okay, that is saved. And now I'm going to sign up again. I probably can't use that exact same email address. devon+test@raddevon.com. We'll try that. All right, let's sign up with this one. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to clear out the console just so I can see if anything new happens. Now let's sign up. Ah, that looks better. This is kind of what we expected to see. Let's drop a post in here. Doing it live. All right. Okay, that post should be in. If you'll remember, these do not refresh in real time, so we'll need to refresh the site. There's our post. Now let's log back in, make sure that our trigger that keeps us from posting multiple times is still in effect here. I'm signed back in. Let's try a new post. Doing it live. Again. All right, that one failed. So that's good. It looks like pretty much everything is in place once we flip that switch to turn off the email confirmations. To be clear, that's probably not a thing you would want to do in production. Email confirmations are generally a good thing. That way people aren't just signing up with other people's email addresses and annoying them, at least not without their confirmation first. But that's all there is to deploying this on Netlify. That was a pretty seamless process, and everything appears to be working just as we would have hoped. Really quickly before I go, if you need to make changes to this, you would just make your changes locally like you normally would. You can test them locally against your local copy of Supabase. Then when that's done, you would add and commit your new changes to Git. And the way you do that is you can do git add and then give it the names of the files that you want to commit. If you're not sure what files you've changed, you can do git status and it'll show you a list of the files that need to be committed that have changes. Once you've added those, you can run git commit to commit the changes, to lock them into your repository. If you want to do the message right here in the command line, you can do this and just type your message in here, your commit message. Then once you lock that in, you've got your new changes locally. You'll just need to push them up to Git. I'm not actually doing any of this because I don't have any changes, but once you've done the commit, you would just do git push, and that would push everything up to GitHub. Since your Netlify is hooked in to that repository, as soon as that goes up to GitHub, Netlify gets notified. They will pull your new code down, run your build process, and deploy that new build automatically for you without you having to do anything else. I was pretty impressed with the process with Netlify. It's been a long time since I deployed anything to Netlify, so I'd kind of forgotten how simple it really was, and their GitHub deployment is just really slick. They're not paying for this video, by the way. I just thought it was a really fantastic process. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.